Just watched the final season of Disenchantment. The ending was unexpected but fitting. I always hated Alpha and he never got any better throughout the series and he never got any better, and spoilers, him becoming king was thematically good I guess, since Dreamland originally was governed by the elves until the humans forcefully made them retreat to the woods. So my only issue is, why did it have to be Elfo to be the king? I get that he was the main elf in the show, but he was always so insufferable, and the funny part, even the characters in the show found him to be annoying. And speaking of which, let's talk about the character arc Tibini went through, from a princess that only cared about just having fun, getting wasted and getting in really short-term relationships, to someone who had to step up when her evil mother, who at first she didn't know who was evil, got released, and at first was pretty chill bonding with Tibini, but then that reunion got soiled when Bean found out that the reason how she got petrified for all these years was that she was trying to turn her dad the king into stone, and the only reason why she turned was because Bean switched the potion she made for King Zod. They find this out after Bean brought her mother back, so people in the castle starts turning into stone coincidentally after Queen Dagmar's back, but Bean thinks it's Queen Una who was doing this because of jealousy, but Lucy found out that it was Dagmar who was turning people into stone, and before Bean could figure any of this out, Dagmar tricks Bean to escape Dreamland and to go to the Queen's homeland with her, and Zog was left alone with his stone subjects. Then after some fillery not so good episodes, some crazy golem people mentions some prophecy, then Dagmar was trying to marry Bean with Satan, but then Bean does a switcheroo and Dagmar ends up with Satan. But before this happens, I forgot to mention that a blimp crashes into Dreamland and Bean gets a gun. This will come back to the plot in a significant way later after she comes back home and existentially shoots Zog, and Zog was dying because medieval medicine can't remove a bullet. Bean, knowing this, sneaks into Zog's room to remove the bullet. Oh yeah, the reason she had to sneak in was she was under house arrest for shooting the king, but Bean, knowing she was the only one that can save her dad's life, she does. But everyone seeing this thinks she was about to kill Zog again and try to burn her, but the ground caves in and she ends up where Dagmar was hiding with her army of trogs. Then Bean dresses up like Dagmar and tricks the trogs to obey her instead of the real Dagmar, realizing her mother never loved her, freeing her from the physical grip she had on Bean with her before, usually seeing cryptic dreams of Dagmar. Then Zog gets reunited with Bean after he got barred alive, which left him psychologically damaged, but I didn't really like how they showed this. Instead of getting a greater deep dive into Zog's mind, the show opted to just make Zog honk all the time, which gets grating the longer it went on. Then after yet another failed assassination attempt on Zog, were one of his advisors who was conspiring against him. After this, flees to Steamland and Bean following after, and she somehow gets a job at a bell factory and meets a guy called Gordy there, and it's revealed that Gordy is the ruler of Steamland and he wants to marry Bean to get to some power that's hiding beneath Dreamland. So Bean, not wanting to marry the man who was responsible for her father getting shot, runs away and escapes him and gets reunited with Elfo, and here is when she meets Mora, a mermaid voice actress who got captured by humans. So Bean rescues her from her captives and she tags along with Bean on her way back home to Dreamland, but before they could go back to Dreamland, Mora is gone and Bean and the others crash lands on an island and Bean gets knocked out, leaving what happened next of her finding Mora again and meeting her family left ambiguous. So after Bean seemingly having the time of her life after she gets back, she's unsure either that even happened or not. So after she gets back to Dreamland, she's just sad, but then her former stepmom Una bond while they're on drugs, and since she's listening to her, Bean realizes she wasted years painting for her evil mother's affection and approval, despite her stepmom Una being a pretty cool substitute. I guess Bean thought since Una never really loved Zog since they were together because of an arranged marriage, she didn't really care much her either, but this was a false assumption. Also, she doesn't hate Zog or anything either, she just doesn't love him, hence her becoming a pirate later on. Also, when Zog gets traumatized, she comes back to help him through this, showing that she's a really nice person. So in this bonding session, Bean decides that she wants to help the people of Dreamland, so Bean uses his fiancée who got his brain swapped for a pig as a bargaining chip to get money from his kingdom to arm an army, while she's also doing everything she can to bring her father back from the brink, since because of his trauma he got being buried alive he can't speak anymore. But even in this tragic state he's in, he sees that Bean's already proven herself to be a better ruler of Dreamland that Zog ever was, despite Bean herself not seeing it. So Bean takes her place as queen of Dreamland until her dad gets cured and send him to a place to get cured. So after Zog gets sent to the asylum, we see that the people who was supposed to help him get cured treated him terribly, but he escapes that place and actually gets help by some monks, and after that we even see him reconnect with his werebear wife and son. Also, Alfo in this arc finally stops simping for Bean and becomes more jaded, all for stealing and doing stuff like instigating race wars and stuff like that. He even gets to meet his mother, turns out he's part ogre now. And speaking of mothers, a weird thing happens where Bean's mother shows up and tries to force Bean to marry Satan, but when Bean found a way to make Dagmar marry him instead of her, it was played off like that was Dagmar's plan all along. Like, if that was her plan, why try to make Bean marry him at the first place? Anyway, after this, Dagmar throws Bean over the castle to the ocean where Mora the mermaid comes to the rescue and saves her. Also, I forgot to mention the existence of Bad, which is what it sounds like, an evil version of Bean. The main things she did before getting killed by Good Bean was invading Bean's Bean's dreams, which Dagmar was already doing. So here's a quick summary on what she did. She trapped Bean in a mirror where Lucy helped the real Bean to get out of that predicament so that the real Bean can kill her. So now that we're caught up with all that, Bean, after she's rescued by Mora, goes to get away from it all and tells Mora that she feels better just living together with Mora than being the ruler of Dreamland, which is followed up on at the end of the show where the elves and the trogs takes their rightful rule of Dreamland at the end. But before that happens, Bean has to leave Mora just one last time to save Dreamland from Dagmar, and meanwhile Elfo actually gets another good moment where he laments simping over Bean and that he should have appreciated Bean for the good friend she was for Bean. To hear this, giving us a great moment in the show that even I have to admit was great despite me not being the biggest Elfo fan. Also, last Elfo praise I'm going to give is his relationship with Mop Girl, which starts off with them trying to hide Bad Bean's head from Dagmar to actually being pretty well written relationship and thematically good relationship, with Mop Girl being half elf half human, and at the end when she becomes Queen of Dreamland despite at first wanting to just be in the background. Elfo and Mop Girl actually was a really good development, with Elfo pointing out her ability to lead, something Mop Girl never noticed, with her always being the Mop Girl, and with the reveal of Mop Girl being half elf half human it makes sense why she became the Queen of Dreamland with Elfo the king at the end. This show has a really good ending in general, with Bean after defeating Dagmar. After Bean goes on a training arc mastering her lighting powers with the help of the Queen of the Crones who knew about the prophecy and everything, so she helped Bean to master her powers. And speaking of the prophecy, Bean saves her father from a demon that was coming to take him away to hell, so Bean uses her newly mastered powers to close the hatch to hell, saving Zog, and then she destroy the eternal flame, destroying the temple they were in, and because of this the island they were in going from a barren wasteland to a beautiful forest. Then as Bean masters her powers we see Bad Bean finally becoming whole again after losing her head for all this time. While all of this is happening, Mop Girl and Elfo are reuniting everyone in Dreamland for the final battle against Dagmar for when Bean gets back. So when Bean comes back to defeat Dagmar by herself, everyone in Dreamland shows up to help her, which gives her the chance to go to the Crystal Caverns to take on Bad Bean. So Bean learns that she can charge her magic abilities here, and we learn here that these caverns are where the Dreamland true magic can be unlocked and that Dagmar took Bean there when she was younger. Also it's explained here that how the Crystal Caverns were created, which is the angels' tears fall down from heaven into the Dreamland rivers, they seep down under the castle, and the steam from hell rises up and combines with those waters creating the Crystal Caverns, which is a really cool world building tidbit. And speaking of world building, I really like the world building in this show, having magic and science intertwined with Dreamland, a land of magic with elves, fairies, ogres, demons, angels, even God who is overseeing everyone but never intervening. And this pisses off Jerry, who's a human that died and went to heaven, and he stayed up kills God because of God's passivity to the terrible things that are going on in Dreamland. And speaking of which, Bean shoots her lighting at the crystals, unlocking Dreamland's magic, and then we see it affecting the resonance of Dreamland. But before we see the ramifications of this, Bad Bean uses illusionary magic, so Bean stabs Mora thinking that it was Bad Bean. Bean seeing this gets so sad and angry, just destroys Bad Bean with a full power blast of her lighting, and after Bean understandably gets depressed and does nothing until Lucy gets killed again, and that becomes Bean's big wake-up call to finish the war against Dagmar once and for all. Before that we get her explanation to how Dagmar and Bean are magical. Dagmar because she eats the trog's brains, and Bean whenever she has strong emotions she has not just the lighting powers, she can even heal people. As for the final battle, Bean and Dagmar goes from shooting lighting using the power of the water from their powers originated from to going to this place filled with giant mushrooms, and by inhaling the fumes coming out of these mushrooms they both fight while they're in a drug trip. And speaking of drug trips, Bean's stepmom Una comes to help her defeat Dagmar, Una being the mother that cared about Bean all along, helping Bean to defeat Dagmar, the mother who used and abused her mostly psychologically with the dreams but also physically with the lightning. Then as for Alva, the ruler of Steamland, who was obsessing over marrying Bean, gets a fitting end as well when took a rocket powered by Bean's lightning trying to go to some other world which wasn't elaborated on, but landing on the moon with the Trogs, who was obsessed with the moon. Going back to Lucy, he gets one wish from God and he wishes for Mora to come back instead of himself to be reborn, because he saw how sad Bean was when Mora died, and Lucy admits to God the reason why he did this is because he loves Bean, and he shows that he is fully willing to forego his own happiness of living alongside Bean for this, reuniting Bean and Mora, giving the show a happy ending. Also with Bean and Mora running away at their wedding instead to avoid having this huge ceremony was also a funny callback to how the show began, with Bean biling on her own wedding, book ending the show going full circle from how it began and how it ended. This show had a rough beginning. Also it had the same problem Steven Universe had with having borderline filler episodes in the middle portion, but unlike Steven Universe, once this show hits its stride it just got better and better with building up the world, the characters, and it fully wrapped up the story in a nice concise way and gave the characters we grew to love a happy ending. Like, comment, share and subscribe for more of my thoughts and drawings on cartoons and anime.